because it's your opinion, your take, that is really the reason that you're writing this, that's driving the whole piece. In the most boring sense, an opinion piece is a book report or something from Comp 101 in high school. Okay, so you have a book that you read. You like the book, right? I like it, I don't like it, but that's never enough. Why did you like it? What chapters did you like? What was the theme of it? What moved you? What did you disagree with? So you can kind of look at an op-ed sort of that way. You're making an argument. You're sort of, I mean, a book report's a little too easy a comparison, but in a way, you are sort of taking something apart. Maybe taking something apart that's been in your head forever, or something that's always been around, like systemic racism, racial injustice, police brutality, and it's hitting you in a new way. And you go, oh, aha. That's what you're putting down. That's the opinion part. That's the most important part of your piece. The personal story you use or the research is there to support the sort of aha you have, right? And that aha, again, is you, the writer, bringing your experience and your take to a column or a piece. That's what's going to make it, that's what's going to elevate it. That's what's going to make it different. I had a director, in another lifetime, I was an actor. And I had a director who told me, she was talking about scripts, but she said, there are no new stories. They've all been told. We all know about she rattled off, death in the family, abuse, bad marriage, and et cetera, et cetera. And she said, the only thing that matters, the only thing that's going to make the audience pay attention is you kind of channeling that story that we all know. And that's just another way of saying what I just told you, that your particular intersection with this huge issue of racial injustice, that is going to, that's what's going to make it stand up. Because no one else can write that but you. I would say just also to prepare yourself for writing an op-ed, this is really obvious too, read the op-ed pages, read opinion pieces. That's how I knew what they looked like. That's how I knew when I started writing them, how to write it. You don't really learn by a format, although we're gonna talk about a format. Formats are just there to kind of guide you when you get stuck, but you really learn to write these things by reading them. That's how novelists learn to write novels. That's how memoirists learn to write memoirs. You read other people's stuff. There's a line from a writer, I can't think of the name, but the saying is, good writers borrow and great writers steal. I'm not telling you to plagiarize, but do read opinion pieces in papers, and you will sort of absorb the format. You kind of will understand what they're supposed to look like and what they're supposed to read like. Okay. So an opinion just, is not a story. It is a story, but it is not the same thing as a personal essay. There can be elements of personal essay in an opinion, of course. Sometimes it's a hybrid. But the big difference between just telling a story, a very interesting story, and writing an opinion piece is the opinion piece has a point. It's arguing for something, for some kind of statement or truth. Okay, so it's story in service of something. You're trying to persuade the audience of your point of view, or your particular truth about something. So that's the difference. And again, when you get lost, always go back to what is the why here? Why do I think this? What am I trying to tell someone? That's the whole point. Okay. Just to distinguish them from editorials. People often confuse opinions and editorials. This is just a technical thing. So opinion pieces are pieces by pieces that express the opinion of the writer and only the writer. Editorials are written by a group of people at newspapers representing the newspaper. So editorials by the New York Times or the Washington Post or whoever is a group, they get together in a room and they hash out their particular point of view on an issue or a policy. It's not personal. It is a collective expression by the paper of their point of view about something. So it's much different than an opinion. People just kind of conflate them, but they're really not the same thing. Again, an opinion is an individual piece of writing. Oh, let me say another very important thing about an opinion, especially one that's going to be about something as crucial as racial injustice or racism. It's got to mean something to you. There's a million things out there you can read, including my stuff probably, on racial injustice, racism, police brutality. There's billions and billions of things out there that you could read, and I advise you to read them. But when you write your own piece, it's got to mean something to you. Don't write something because you think it'll be provocative, just because you think it'll be provocative, or because you think it will get eyeballs, or because you think it'll really piss off those Black people, or piss off those white people, or piss off your boss, or I don't know, your family, I don't know. You might, if they do, okay, fine. But that's not the primary reason you write it. It has to mean something to you. It's that aha thing I was talking about. Like, I see. You see something in a new way. You have a realization that makes sense. That, you figure something out and you want to share it with the world. And if it pisses off your family, well, okay, that's just going to do that. But that's the thing. People can tell the difference too. An editor will know when you're just sort of writing something to be provocative, or you're borrowing some other very provocative argument you read versus something that means something to you. The most frequent edit I've given to people in my kind of brief career as a writing teacher is, but what does this mean to you? Open this up. Tell me what this means to you. So when you write this, you got to really ask yourself questions. You might find out something, and you should find out something you don't know about yourself or your opinion as you write. This should be sort of an act of discovery. In your head, you think you've got it all figured out, but that's what writing does. Writing, when you start to put it down, you might say, oh, wait a minute. You know what? I hadn't thought of that. Maybe I should look into that. Be honest. You might have had an opinion about something. When you write it down, it's looking back at you. Be honest enough to say, oh, I don't know. I might have to look into that a little deeper. Take yourself there, wherever there is. You may not even know where there is. You may think you do. You got it all figured out. But then when you put it on paper, you put it in words, especially something complicated like racial issues. Be careful. Go slow. Ask yourself, do I really mean that? Or maybe that's not. I don't know. Maybe that's not quite what I mean. Let me see. Let me look something up here. Let me be sure that I know what I'm saying. And by the way, if you don't know what you're saying, if you're ambiguous or ambivalent about racial injustice or something, it's fine to say, I don't know yet. That could be part of your opinion piece. Your confusion, your angst, your ambivalence would be part of the opinion. That is perfectly fine. Don't act like you know everything. That's death. First thing I learned as a reporter, do not pretend you know everything. I found that very, very freeing. Okay. But even in your ambivalence, you have to be firm. You have to be confident. You have to know what you don't know. Okay. Your opinion piece might be about everything you don't know and how shocking that is. Oh my God, I didn't know this. All right. And then you can talk about why, how did I live in such ignorance? So everything is fair game in an opinion piece. Honesty and clarity are the two most important things in any piece, particularly a piece about this sort of issue. So that's the most important thing. So the types of opinion piece, there are a few kind of types, genres. First, something we call an evergreen. That is something you could pitch anytime, not topical. An evergreen could be usually it's a personal essay type piece that you can run anytime. It's not something that happened yesterday. It's something that you've been thinking about a long time. It could be something about, something that happened a year ago, but it's still relevant. In the business, we call that an evergreen. And you can pitch those anytime or publish them anytime. That's not actually what we're dealing with today, topically. And then there are current events. And of course, we all know the current event, the only story that could possibly knock out weeks and weeks and weeks of the COVID-19 story, racial protest. something we have seen so many times before, but we are now experiencing a difference this time. That's the thing about stories. The same story keeps happening, but really the same story you see becomes a different story. This feels like a culmination of something. Don't ask me where it's headed. I don't know. But anyway, we are definitely in this class going to discuss a current event. Although one could argue racism is a story that has gone back hundreds of years, including police brutality, America's color caste system, all of that. None of that is new. None of that is new. But we have a moment now that is showing some people, enlightening a lot of people, reinforcing it for a lot of other people, frustrating a lot of other people, illuminating a lot of people. Some people have a great hope. I, in some ways, have great hope. Again, this is what you will bring to a piece on this subject. So that's a current event. Some opinion pieces are on cultural trends or political trends. And very often, cultural trends and political trends are related. The cultural trend of, I don't know, I don't even know what's popular now, I'm old. Everybody's adopting a pet now. That's great because we're all locked down, we're bored, and we need company. I would write a piece, I can tell you right now, I'd write a piece, looking into the future, worrying about, will people keep these pets? I have 6 dogs myself and some number of cats who live outside. And by the way, if they start barking, please ignore them. Just ignore them. That's my only caveat working at home. But I would want to write a piece about, let us hope we keep our dogs and cats. Let's not abandon our best friends. All right, that's just an example of something that's a cultural trend. Although it's deeply tied to a political and economic trend, which is the COVID-19 pandemic. So in a piece, I might write about dog adoption, the great news of the increased dog and cat adoptions. I would have to link it to, of course, the economic trend of total, the sort of the free fall of our economy due to the pandemic. That leads me to another point about op-eds. One always has to be a journalist when you're writing an op-ed, whether you're a journalist or not. But you always want to give a context to what you're writing. So with racism and racial injustice, that's a very big phrase. It's a very big idea. We see it, of course, we have it focused now on police brutality. That is probably the most visual, the most clear example that we have as a country of racial injustice. Black people being beaten and or killed for little to no reason over and over and over. Okay, but there are many, many other types of injustice. And so you could write a piece. I see Mary is flashing me a question. What do I mean by context? Hang on, Mary, I'm about to explain it. I'm giving an example, pay attention. So the context of writing a story about, your own encounter with racial injustice. I'll tell you a very quick story that to me comes to mind every time I think about this. When I was in college, and very unpolitical or apolitical, believe it or not, I was studying theater, and I had a professor call me to his office and say he could not grade my term paper. I had to take an academic class in addition to performance classes. And he said, I can't grade your paper, Miss Aubry. This is not your paper. You didn't write this. I was very surprised. I said, no, I wrote it. I mean, I had written many papers in my life. I was been an English major. It was not a big deal to me. But this man who happened to be white kept insisting, well, you didn't write this. And I said, I was very surprised. I said, why don't you think I wrote this paper? He said, you don't speak very well. And he actually said, people like you don't speak very well. And I know you didn't write this. Now, wait a minute. Now, suddenly this goes immediately from being the context, which dawned on me even at 23, I think I was at the time, was, wait a minute, this isn't about me. This is about 400 years of racism. He really cannot believe that a Black person, maybe even a woman, would write something that was competent, well thought out, whatever. It was actually a compliment, but because of racism, it ended up being an insult. And so that is what I mean by context. Of course, if I were to tell, and I've not told the story in a column, but if I were to tell it, it would be about my encounter with 400 years of racism and how it kind of changed, it politicized me, or woke me up. I got woke. officially, even though I'd grown up with stories and of racism, et cetera, et cetera. But this was a personal awakening. And the context was something, you could see I just gave it to you. It is this caste system we have in this country and elsewhere that would not allow this man to believe that I had, in fact, done this piece of work. Why would that be so hard to believe? I had to go in search of why I was so surprised. And that context is historical, it's political, it's racial, okay? So that is a clear example of how, when you write an opinion piece, you can't just say, oh, I had this encounter with this guy and it felt terrible. And it did feel terrible. I was embarrassed. There were all the personal things that were important. But what makes this, the argument I'm making in this piece is, of course, just when we think, there's no such thing as racism in a liberal university where I was, which was UCLA, in the 80s, wow, no, not true. Not true. This is what I experienced. So that's the kind of context I'm talking about. If you're going to write a piece on your encounter with the Ku Klux Klan in some fashion, you have to speak a little bit about the history of the Klan, what it was created to do. Does it still exist? You have to give that's kind of context you have to give in opinion pieces. If you're talking about other entities, you're always going to bring in a little bit of history, a little bit of information. So that's what I mean by having context in an opinion piece to flesh out an individual story. Because an individual story is always related to something larger. It's always related to something larger, even in an intimate family piece, but that's another conversation. Okay. So how do we structure an opinion piece? That's the thing. You probably have a million ideas in your head, and setting them forth, that's the whole thing, right? That's the whole enchilada. So first of all, realize you have 800 words. That's not much time. That's not a lot of words. Some papers might give you 1,000, maybe even 1,200. That's a lot, but it's not a lot of words to express a big idea, or even a medium-sized idea. So you have to be sort of a relentless editor of yourself and learn how to be, always ask yourself the question, what is it I'm really trying to say? And try to only share the details that matter. Uh-oh. I'm sorry, I went away for a second. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm back. I did something crazy.
Oh, okay.
Did you say something, Marilyn?
No, I just wanted to know if you needed anything.
Not at this point, but
okay.
So the structure I'm going to talk about is really, you can start, I'll be honest with you, I'm not a fan of formats and protocols. Sorry, Marilyn, but I'm not. I understand the use of using structures to get yourself started and to really flesh out, to really put forth what it is you're trying to say, so they can be really, really useful. So here's a basic structure of an opinion piece. Okay, here's one way to do it. Write, kind of like bullet points. 1, here's the issue or the problem. Because normally when you're writing your piece, you're talking about a problem or something that bothers you. You can write a piece about being happy. That's okay too, like what you see going right. But 99% of the time, people are writing about a problem, conflict. And that's certainly what we're talking about now. Racism by definition is conflict. Inequality by definition is conflict, an unresolved problem. So in an opinion piece, so you want to say, so the issue, the problem, we all know, let's say you are writing about some kind of racial injustice. The problem or the issue would be something more specific than just racial injustice, but maybe something more specific that you have in mind. Okay, your whatever it is you want to talk about related to that. So number 1, here's the issue or the problem. 2, here's what I think about that issue or problem. Okay, so that's number 2. Write that in a graph. And 3, here's why I think it's a problem. Okay, and this is where you tell your personal story, or you put forth your research about this topic. Okay, so And then at the very end, which really, but if you get to the end, you really pretty much, you put down the whole meat of the piece. And then the end, you sort of restate what you say at the beginning, but hopefully add a little more. Because moving through the opinion piece, maybe you yourself have learned something or discovered something, and you just kind of put that at the end. Kind of like the old book report that I talked about in the beginning. You just kind of restate at the end what you said in the beginning, but in a somewhat different way. Okay, because you're taking us through your opinion, your story, and at the end, you can kind of use a little bit of that story that you just told to restate what you said in the beginning. So that's a really simple structure. Again, I'll repeat it. First thing, here's the issue, here's the problem. In the story I just told you about the encounter of my professor, the problem would be that, racism in universities that I didn't know about, that's a problem, or that we assume is going away in institutions of higher learning, okay? Here's what I think. It's wrong. It's damaging. It has long-lasting effects. I will tell you, even though I won the battle with the professor, and it's a long story, I won't go into it, but I came away from the encounter feeling not validated, but very diminished, off-center. In some kind of novel or movie, I would have punched his lights out, but that's not what happened. It had a very long-term effect on me that I had to struggle out from under for a long time. So here's what I think. And the next piece, here's why I think it. This is where I would tell the story I just told you about my encounter with that professor. And that would take up most of the opinion piece, because in telling it clearly and specifically, it would perfectly illustrate the big issue of institutional racism, right? And why it's so insidious, okay? And what the argument it's making is that for all of you who think that thing is not a thing, or that it's disappeared, or that, it's only fringe people feel that way, this story would disprove that. It would argue something very different, okay? At the end of this piece, I would say, if I were writing it, I would say, and so that experience has left me wiser. It was sadder, but wiser, more wary, unfortunately quite wary of white authority, okay? But, I came through it. And so I would sort of, I would kind of carry the story through the end. And that's sort of that's one surefire way to write a piece. I could do other things. I could start out with the anecdote itself, with the story itself. Just start out the whole piece. This is another second way to write an opinion piece. The anecdote I just told you. One day in 1986, I was, a student at UCLA, blah, 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 turned in a paper, no big deal. Suddenly I hit, I just, in a shorthand way, tell what happened, okay? And then break off from that opening. That's the anecdote. That's called the anecdotal lead. I would do that. And then the next piece would be, the next part of the opinion piece would be, here's what I thought about that experience. I'm going to tell you what I thought. It was devastating. It was this, it was that, it was, It was an inflection point for me personally, between being sort of vaguely woke and then fully woke. And then the next part of the opinion piece, why I think it, how did this shape me? How did this change my mind about stuff? Getting deeper into that, okay? How did it change how I saw the world? Because it wasn't just that I changed my mind about the professor, who, by the way, I happened to like. He was a nice guy. I thought we were friends. Well, naive. I was very naive, and I felt foolish for having been so naive. And yeah, that naivety is exactly how things should be. You should trust people. You should assume your professor is going to recognize your ability in a perfect world, but it is not a perfect world. So that's what I would write about. And then, by the end, I would say, yeah, I would say at the end, that was what I learned. That is how I oriented myself to a racist world. I wish I didn't have to do. I wish that hadn't have been necessary, but it was necessary. And I am hoping for the day where I can put my guard down, or something like that, Or I wonder what that guy's doing now. The guy told me I had no business being a writer. Flat out. Flat out. Can you see I'm still angry about this? I need to write this. Oh, by the way, one last thing about opinion pieces. This is, if it's something you're thinking about that, okay, I will, Stephanie, I will write it. Oh yes, Des. Oh, that's my niece. Oh, thank you. I will write it eventually, but not today. Okay. So this is what I mean when I say to you, write something that means something to you, something that you feel, really, even if you feel passionately about your ignorance, you feel something about your whatever, that's what's got to come from you. I would hope, that's what you would lead with, something you feel strongly about. Very important. You can feel passionately about ideas. That's great. But normally, passion about ideas is connected to something personal for you. So always let the reader know what that personal thing is. Not every opinion piece has to be personal, but do understand it has to mean something to you, and you have to should be in your piece. Okay. Yes, I have unresolved feelings about the issue. You are right. I have lots of unresolved feelings about so many things. We're all human beings. We're just one big unresolved whatever. So it's a gold mine for opinion pieces. Nobody has the answer, by the way. You're not, if you can give us a solution to a problem, good on you. I am just not that confident. I'm just sharing my views with people to hope that what I'm really saying is, I'm inviting a response. I am saying to people, isn't this crazy? Or don't you, what do you think? I hope they would agree with me, but the point is to really put yourself out there. And this is where white people can really help with this racial issue. Confess your ignorance, talk about the things you felt like you couldn't talk about before without fearing looking stupid or looking whatever. This is very, very difficult stuff. We have such a protocol in this country of not speaking about race. It's such a weird thing. People are so rude and they spew profanity on social media and TV and all that. And yet we are so hesitant. We are so afraid of insulting each other or saying the wrong thing or violating the racial protocol, which is very strict, and people, particularly white people, do not cross those boundaries, especially good liberal white people who are taught not to talk about race. That's just not what a good white person does. Well, yeah, you do. You can. We don't have much practice at it, but we need to start somewhere because this is all our country, right? Okay, don't get me started. I'm gonna start waving a flag. I don't want to do that. I don't wave flags. Not yet. Not yet. One other thing I want to mention about writing an opinion piece, and that is, and then I'll stop, I promise. When you're arguing for something, like I told you the story about this racist professor, who I resisted calling racist. I wanted him to be my friend, but it wasn't possible, right? It was a very hard truth I had to learn. Someone out there might say, but he just, maybe you should give him a break. Maybe he was having a bad day, or, in an opinion piece, you can always anticipate what I call anticipating the opposition or speaking to the opposition. You might think this professor was just, this was just a minor thing, or he was having a bad day. No, I gave him opportunity to, kind of get out of, kind of wiggle out of the racist hole, and you would not do it. So in some instances, you want to anticipate the counter argument and address it in your opinion piece, because you know what people will say, right? And you can just, kind of make your piece actually stronger by voicing that argument. People will make. You might have heard that argument from many other people. Oh, it's not such a big deal. Oh, you're making too much of it. I wish I had been making too much of it. I would love to have been making too much of it. And that's something I would put right in the piece. So, in an opinion piece where you're making an argument, anticipate the other argument. You can address it or not, but always, if it's something controversial, like what we're talking about now, anticipate the arguments and address them if you want. I think in the current moment, in the George Floyd moment, part of the reason it's been so galvanizing is that what we all saw for 8-9 minutes on tape does not give any counter argument. There's no way you can look at that and say, oh, but maybe he was just having a bad day, or maybe he didn't really want to do that, or maybe the guy was trying to hurt, maybe he was resisting arrest. I think what galvanized people in this case was, as a friend of mine put it, he had 9 minutes to make a different choice and didn't. And because he didn't, and because the other cops stood there in, complicit, says everything we don't want to know about race relations and racial dynamics in this country, okay? So I think that I'm gonna stop here for just a moment and see if we can do a little bit of back and forth. A little bit of
Hey, Erin.
questions. Yes, Marilyn.
There were a couple of good questions that popped up here.
Okay.
So a couple of people were asking if solutions are part of the op-ed, if you have to offer a solution.
I would say yes. I did kind of say, solutions is a big word. I would say suggestions. Of course, if you have a plan to fix a problem, be my guest. I have a friend who sent me pretty much an op-ed. She was voicing how angry she was about the fact that people are not rioting about healthcare. Why aren't we rioting about healthcare? She, in this email, argued, said she's paying all this money per month just going to insurance companies. It's screwing all of us. Why aren't we out there rioting about it? And she actually sent she said, I'm no expert, but here's my plan. And she actually sent what looked to me like a pretty sensible 5-bullet point plan for changing this whole craziness, this whole healthcare fiasco. So yes, can you? Yes, if you feel strongly about it, and maybe that will be the whole point of, maybe that will be the main point of your op-ed, is to have a solution. I'm not going to say no. I wouldn't say no. Like I said, there's no rule to this. If you've got it, you feel like it's viable, you feel like it's really something you want to say, and you can explain it, I say go for it.
Also, do you think you could maybe point out the structure and maybe one of the pieces that
Sure.
read?
Can we bring one up?
Sure. Which one?
The one by Carmelo.
Okay.
Oh no, where's the?
Sorry. Although maybe if I do it on the desktop.
That's okay. That's groovy.
Carmelo's piece. Oh my goodness. I'm on Jeff's computer. I'm so sorry, guys.
It's Jeff's fault.
It's totally Jeff's fault.
Totally Jeff's fault.
It's not letting me do it.
Oh, well.
Wait, hang on. Let me try one other thing.
You do the other one.
Here,
Oh, here,
Okay,
Google
so-
Chrome. Sorry. Here we go.
Can you see that?
This one, right?
The Kelly Thomas moment. Right.
Is that too small?
A little small. Can you make it a little larger? Would that be possible? Okay. Okay, now it's going out of the
It's getting
screen.
closed off.
It's getting a little closed off.
How do I?
You can also, can you close that part of it or no?
Okay.
There. Now maybe you can zoom.
Thank you. That's perfect. Well, I'm fine. That's good. That's great.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you, Marilyn. So this piece that hopefully you read ahead of time, I have to say, Carmelo Malone was actually a student of mine at Antioch University in my journalism class, I think it was. So I'm just want to, again, shameless self-promotion via a student who wrote a very good piece. This was back in 2012. God, it feels like a million years ago. And this was a piece that was reacting to a current event at the time, which was the killing of a mentally ill man who happened to be white, but he was a mentally ill man in Orange County. This became a big deal because it raised issues about the treatment of the mentally ill in police custody, a problem, and And this happened in Orange County, which frankly drew a lot of attention because we don't associate Orange County, i.e. a place with a lot of white people, a lot of, suburban calm. We don't associate this place with police brutality or police problems. So it got the attention of a lot of people. And so this piece is called My Kelly Thomas Moment, which kind of gives you a hint about what this is. So Carmelo starts off the piece by giving you the context, right? Saying, later this month, the hearings are scheduled to begin for the 2 Fulton police officers after the beating death of Kelly Thomas, an Orange County homeless man. That's another thing. It spotlights the problem of the homeless, many of whom are mentally ill or have mental emotional problems. We all need to pay attention, Carmelo says. We're like, okay, all right, Carmelo, we'll pay attention. And then he goes on to say, it'd be easy to conclude Thomas was homeless because by choice, et cetera, but things are more complex than that. Now he goes on to tell his story. I myself have never been truly homeless, but I refused mental health care on many occasions, et cetera, et cetera. Now he's starting to tell you, this is what happened to me. So suddenly we're like, oh, the writer, wait a minute. And what's so interesting, we're already pulled in because he is obviously, he's not, you're assuming the person writing this is sane, calm, a writer. And all of a sudden, we don't expect this writer to be mentally ill or mentally have mental difficulty. So he starts telling this very compelling story. I won't go through it word by word, but just in telling the story, we can see immediately, like the story I told you about my professor, we can see immediately this is not as simple a thing as we thought it was. He talks about acting on the surface, really unpredictably, maybe even walking up to the line of, not that he deserved it, but it was hard to interpret, his actions, okay? And he also says, I was lucky. I did not get beaten to death like Kelly Thomas. I survived it, okay? But the question running through his mind, kind of the most dramatic point of the story is, will they kill me? Will they beat me to death? Because even in his, he couldn't help his behavior, but he knew even within this behavior, I'm in trouble and I could get killed. That was always present in his mind. That's very compelling stuff. So, he tells a story, and he said, and now he's writing it as a comparison to Kelly Thomas. I survived it and Kelly Thomas did not, okay? And he says, 17 years later, I lead a healthy life. I'm going towards graduate school. I'm good. I'm one of the lucky ones. But the conclusion is interesting. He says, I don't want to hide from who I once was because that never helped me. Who I am today would not be possible without who I was yesterday. And he says, I have no perfect solutions to offer police, but I do know what it's like being there. Okay, so that's a pretty straightforward piece. It's like, it is a personal story, but it is framed in the context of more than a couple of social problems, okay? And he ends with his point of view having been part of this problem. And he may be, again, we don't know. But what he's doing is humanizing a really abstract, complex problem that people sort of go, oh yeah, what a shame, and they just don't really think about it. So that's the structure. That's the heart of that piece is, of course, Carmelo's story. So do we have any questions or? Let's see.
I can help.
Okay.
So one person asked if you need to have a nut graph where you state the problem in the beginning of the piece, just like just like in a personal essay.
I think a personal essay you have more leeway, but yeah, I mean, a nut graph, I associate more the longer reported piece, a feature, something longer than an opinion piece. But yeah, the anecdote, for example, if you start an opinion piece with an anecdote, that's an anecdotal lead. I think I mentioned that earlier. That's a lead, and the nut graph underneath the opening scene could be something like, I was there once, and let me tell you how it felt. I mean, yeah, there is such a thing as a nut graph in an opinion piece. It's not maybe as obvious as it would be in a longer piece, but a nut graph simply means kind of stating the main idea of the piece. And in the piece we just looked at, there was a nut graph which said, things are not what they seem. I know because I was there. And that's what made him write the piece. That is the nut graph. That is the controlling idea of the piece. And he does say that. So yeah, you can have a nut graph. Certainly when you're writing, if you're writing that basic structure, here's the problem. Here's what I think. The what I think should be, I think you could say that would be the nut graph to me. That sets up the theme. Okay, and the why elaborates on it.
Then there's a question about how much research and what level of detail of research do we need to include in the piece?
Really depends on the piece. You can't, just because it's so brief, it's 800 words, you're not going to be able to do a lot of research. By research, you might be talking about a few lines of text. If you're doing an opinion piece on, your encounter with the history of the Ku Klux Klan, you might want to, use more research because that's kind of the subject, the history of the Ku Klux Klan, how I encountered it. That would be part of the piece. But generally, you just use the research as needed. I think you just have to figure that out. And by research also, I mean, reading other pieces and getting a sense of how other people, kind of understanding what other people's take on it is also helpful. That's also research. So always you have to do some kind of reading, if not actually looking up facts and figures, which, then looking up what other people say and kind of getting a sense of the context that way. So there's always some sort of research, but you're not going to put all of it necessarily into the piece, but it helps you as a writer to put down your own thoughts.
Then someone else was asking if op-eds get fact-checked.
Oh yeah, they do. In my dealings with like LA Times, New York Times, there's not a fact. Oh no, I'm sorry. The New York Times does have an actual fact checker. The LA Times does not, but the editor is essentially the fact checker. So the editor who's dealing with your piece would raise questions. Is this true? Or are you sure about this? They act as a fact checker. Sometimes there's a separate person fact checking, but not always. But that would be the editor. If not the editor, then the actual fact checker. So yeah, so you know what? Fact check yourself first.
And then one person was asking, how do you suggest improving your syntax/jargon, or when does an editor get involved?
Well, first of all, don't use jargon. I don't even like that word, jargon. Don't use jargon unless you're writing a column about jargon and you have to use the word. So like I said, the most important thing is to be clear. Clarity is key. So don't use cute language if it doesn't, if it's not expressing what you want to say. First order of business is being clear. So I'm not sure what you mean by jargon. You mean like slang or inside baseball kind of language? I don't know. Maybe if you're talking about using academic terms or terms people don't widely understand, you could explain it within a piece. That's fine, but understand your audience. If you're a doctor writing a medical piece, you're not really writing for other doctors. You're writing for a general audience. The GA, the old GA, the general audience. So you're writing towards that. You're not writing towards all your hipster friends or, the audience is always a general audience. And whatever that means to you, what it means is that you can't get too technical or too much in the weeds with language that people in general are not going to understand. So that's kind of your call. An editor will point it out, trust me. So if they don't get it or if it's too obscure to them, they'll let you know.
And okay, oh my goodness.
What? What's that? What's the, oh my
There's
goodness.
some provocative questions here. Okay.
Yeah, let's have a provocative.
All right. Yeah, and I think I just kind of want to add, I maybe the person that was asking the question about improving the writing, I think what Erin is trying to say is, you know, it's just good to be clear and keep it simple because you want people to understand what you're talking about. My experience is that that the editor wants it to be as polished as possible before you send it in because they don't really have time to edit it for you. But
Yeah,
you don't have to get fancy.
yes, I would say, well, you know, I think it was Stephen King or Ernest Hemingway, one of those, Mark Twain said, never use a $10 word when a $2 word will do. I think you can be, when I say clear, I don't mean be simplistic or like just 101. You can use sophisticated language, syntax, you know, whatever, as long as it's clear. You know, Charles Dickens wrote sentences, paragraph long, but as long as they're clear, that's the main thing. Although I wouldn't recommend writing sentences a paragraph long. That's not going to work. But, you know, clarity. If you have a style of writing long sentences, that's fine. It's just, again, clarity, clarity, clarity. And does it track, as we say? Does it follow? Does it make sense? Not just the syntax, but does it go logically from one thing to another? This is where rereading really helps. After you finish writing something, you think you've really gotten down what you want to say, go away for a minute, come back and read it and see if it flows, because then you will be reading it as a reader, not as yourself. Because when you're just reading it as yourself, you already have the story in your head. So you can read it and it makes perfect sense. But if you come back, read it as a reader, a little bit of objectivity, then that's really helpful. You know, and we're all hard on ourselves. I know I've actually tried to talk students out of not making changes because they'll say, oh no, this is terrible. And it really isn't terrible. It really is good. So you have to know when it's good too. That's hard because everybody wants to tear themselves up all the time. Okay. But I would say, you know, put down your first impulse, put down the passion first, and then you can always trim it and cut it and, you know, tone it down if you need to.
Okay, great. Thank you. People are asking a lot of pitching related questions, and I just want to say that I'm going to be doing a little pitching talk after the break, and we'll cover all of that stuff in there. Here, I guess maybe we can take a couple more, and then we should probably move on so that we have time to give feedback. So one person asked, what do you think about white writers pitching and writing op-eds about race right now? I've seen writers say these pieces should be written by Black writers right now and white writers should step back.
I think if you have something cogent to say, something interesting, I don't see anything wrong with that. I mean, you know, I just don't. I'm not saying, you know, it's up to editors what they're going to run. But as long as you have something substantive to say and it's interesting and it's honest and it's different, I don't think there is a rule. I think that's part of the moment we're in now is that white people are getting Black injustice. That's very different than everybody, you know, now 92 and everybody white was saying, can't we all get along? You know, that's not what we want to hear, or that's not what the moment is. The moment is something very different. So I would not discourage anyone from pitching something that they feel is relevant at this point. And when you say race, you know, white writers on race is such a huge idea. It really depends on what angle they have or what idea they have, really.
Great. And then I think that maybe the last question we'll take before the break. Folks have been asking if if you can be sued for your opinion or you have ever been threatened for one of your pieces.
Well, I've been called lots of names, but not threatened personally. Sued? No, I've not been sued. People have not been happy with things I've written. And I'll tell you one thing, if you interview someone, which is also part of research, if you want to interview someone, use their words in your opinion piece, that's a great part of that if you want to interview whoever, whether it's your neighbor, whoever it is, just be accurate with what they say. That's all I'm going to say. Although oftentimes, even if you're very accurate with what people say, they will take issue because they'll say, oh, you took it out of context, or that's not what I meant. Well, that's something, you know, that's a different issue. But I would just say in your research, whether it's an interview with someone or a source you cite, just be clear about it. Be accurate as you can. And, you know, but no, I've not been sued. Maybe that's unusual. I don't know. But no, I have not. I don't know if, and I actually don't know any other writers who do this who have been sued.
Okay, great.
But I've been called lots of names. Yeah.
All right. Do you think we should maybe take a 5-minute break?
Sure, we can.
Or did you?
Want to keep going, Marilyn? We can.
I think maybe we should take our break now and then come back at 6:40. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
I have 6:37. Is it 6:35 right now?
6. So how about 6? What's that?
6:42.
6:42.
We got 5 minutes, just a shorty break.
A shorty break.
A shorty break. Okay.
For some of you, it's late.
That's true. I hadn't thought of that. Okay. See you in 5.
Okay. We'll see you in 5.
There's nothing there. What happened? Hi, honey. Hey, Darby. Darby. Hi. Almost done. I'm gonna get your hi, Darby. Darby, come here, Mookie. Darby. Where's Darby? Mookie. Darby. 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 Hey, Darby. Not here? Darby. Oh, okay. Come here, Mookie. Mookie, come here, Mookie.
Okay.
Hi.
There's a new student in the class.
New student. Somebody
Love
wanted
one.
to see a dog. This is Mookie.
Sorry about that. Okay, so I am going to just do some brief announcements, and then I'm going to get into my publishing talk, and then we will.
He does. He does the right thing all the time.
But because they probably don't know that you're going to be doing a publishing talk. So
Yeah, I just said that I'm going to be doing the publishing talk.
okay.
I have my little peanut gallery right next to me here. Okay, so we're really excited that all of you are taking this class. Thank you so much for joining us. If you would like to get some help actually polishing your draft, we have actually scheduled 2 sections of a one-night workshopping class with Erin, limited to 10 people. We don't usually do classes this large, but we just wanted you all to, as many people as possible, to understand how to write this excellent form to get your words out there. So I highly recommend that if you can join us, that you do. And I'm going to put some coupons in the chat right now that'll make things a little bit less expensive. Because Erin's class is a one-night class, you should use Bunker 30 for $30 off. And her classes are this Sunday, June 14th from 2 to 5 Pacific Standard, or Wednesday, June 17th from 5 to 8 Pacific Standard. And if you do not get picked to pitch your idea tonight, actually, Erin will give you feedback before the class meeting on your idea, so you have some guidance on writing a really great op-ed. And then afterwards, if you would like her to read it again and give you a private consult. That's also an option. So I highly recommend it. I'm a student of Erin's, and I got published in the LA Times with an op-ed after her class. So if you can afford it, please join us. Also, we are having one other free class to support the Black Lives Matter movement on Thursday, because we just, as a school writing pad, wanted to do what we can to help all of you get your stories out there.
We appreciate that, Marilyn.
Thank you.
This is a real clap. This isn't the internet clap. This is the real clap.
Oh, thank you. I like the real clap.
Thank you.
So on Thursday at 5 o'clock Pacific Standard, we're doing a storytelling class taught by Laura Cathcart-Robbins. Laura won the Moth won a Moth Story Slam with her story, and she also has published a bunch of really amazing essays in the Huffington Post, 8 of them, a lot of which have to do with race and her experience as a Black person. She's really fabulous. And in that class, we'll show you how to record yourself performing a 5-minute story. And we're hoping to disseminate everyone's stories over the internet, over social media, YouTube, and you can even pitch these stories to a podcast or a storytelling show. So you can just sign up on our site. It's totally free. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about as well is that we do have a really great journalism program at Writing Pad if you can afford it. We have a freelance journalism class this Saturday that is extremely helpful in helping you negotiate pay and building a freelance career, and you'll get feedback on pitches. It's with Sophia Kircher, who's an editor, and she's been in the New York Times 8 times. She's really fabulous, and we have really great personal essay classes as well. We've helped 159 people sell essays, and 14 have gotten into the New York Times. And I'm one of those people. I got into the New York Times twice last year because I take the classes myself. So you should just check out our site, and you can use that Bunker 65 or Bunker 65 plan coupon for $65 off a long class. Okay. I think I'm going to wrap that up, and we're going to talk publishing. So here I want to, and also I want to say that I put some handouts in that Dropbox that you got in your welcome email. So you'll have the structure that Erin went over, so you can write a better piece. And also all the stuff that I'm going to be going over will also be included in that Dropbox, and you can download it. Okay, so let's see here. Here is a pitch letter example, and I'm going to go over some procedures as well, but I just want to show you how to structure your pitch letter. And this is the op-ed that I got published after Erin's class. So,
Oh yeah, that's right.
So the way you want to do it is you want to make it short. You want to have your subject line catch the editor's eye, you know, make sure that it's clear that you're pitching an actual piece and you're not a publicist. So for me, I wrote a piece about bad jury duty experience, and then I was watching the news, and at the time, Governor Brown had just vetoed a bill about non-citizen residents sitting on juries. So I was able to hook my pitch into that news item, which is always a good thing to do. So if something specific, I mean, some very terrible specific things have just happened for your op-eds, but if something extra happens that you can, you know, that relates to the op-ed that you're writing, that you can hook into, it will always make your pitch be more compelling to the editor. Mine is, so you put pitch colon, and then for me it was Bill AB 1401 and how jury duty shattered my faith in the justice system. And then I tried to make my summary in the pitch letter as short as possible. So I, pretty much summed it up in a couple of paragraphs in the same format that we told you guys to put, to formulate your pitches. So it was basically, my stories about this, bad jury duty experience I had, but it's really about this. And then I even lifted some things that were part of my op-ed. I kind of gave a little preview of what my recommendation for my op-ed was going to be. And I don't think I had any publishing credits that were worth mentioning, so I just didn't. And that's one way to do it. And I also gave you another essay that I wrote. It was a personal essay, sort of could have been an op-ed, just to show you a more personal experience and how you would write a pitch that if you actually have any clips that you would like to share with the editor. So here I just linked to my clips at the bottom in the PS. Okay, now I'm going to share one more document that I hope you will find helpful. Oh, and one person had asked, are you pitching your idea or you're sending the piece? You should send the piece. You need to have written it. Unless you are someone as fancy and accomplished as Erin and have, multiple pieces in the New York Times, you need to show the editor your piece. They're not going to be like, okay, write it. So just write it. And then try to get it published. So this little document will tell you everything you need to know as you freak out while you're trying to send your work out. But just know it's not personal. If the editor doesn't respond to you, they're not rejecting you personally. They're just really, really busy. And newspapers are a business. So they want to have stories in there that are going to get more clicks on the articles that are going to help them with their advertisers. And, maybe they already accepted an op-ed that was similar to your piece. So what I like to do is I like to try to be very professional and nice and a little bit assertive, but not a stalker. So you can think about it like, kind of like dating. You wouldn't want to, if you were trying to woo somebody, you wouldn't want to email them constantly or send them super long emails and saying, why haven't you answered me? Damn it. Because that would put the person off. And these editors don't know who you are. So just make a good impression on them. And they do need your content because they have a lot of slots to fill every single day in their opinion column. So be professional. If you have a silly email address, don't use that one. Just get one that's your name at gmail.com. If you have a signature, don't include it. Just be kind of professional and simple. Don't make jokes with the editor. Just send them your pitch letter. And you want to also, if they have edits for you, be easy to work with because maybe you're going to want to pitch them again. If there's something in your piece that you feel is really important that shouldn't be changed, then maybe you should push back on it. What I like to do is I like to make a suggestion for how something will be changed if the editor has an issue with it. But if there are little things here and there, just take it. Because it's kind of, to me, I don't know if Erin agrees with me, but I feel like it's a privilege to be published. And
I'm over that.
Okay. I still feel really excited when somebody wants to publish me. So.
Oh, actually, I agree with you. I do feel excited that someone will actually pay me to write something. I feel like I'm getting away with murder or something. But I would say though, I had to learn. It took me a long time to learn what to let go in terms of editing, because some things just aren't that serious. But if someone's trying to shift your main idea, you need to stand up for it. And you know, so you pick your battles, right? Even if you're a total unknown. The problem is you might have an editor who does not have your point of view, does not share your story, and may not even realize they're changing your story not for the better. So you can push back. You don't have to get aggressive, but stand up.
Great, thank you. So to find the editor's contact information, you can just Google the newspaper. And I gave you a lot of newspapers have a separate daily opinion editor and a Sunday opinion editor. I believe that the LA Times only has one now, and it's still Sue Horton. And I just gave you her email address. And in terms of pitching your pieces out there, you know, you can't, because, you know, these pieces that have to do with racism and systemic injustice are national issues. You can pitch to the New York Times, the Washington Post, the LA Times. If you feel like your story is more local and you're making a recommendation that is locally based, then you should start with your local newspaper. But you know, if you kind of tweak your language so that, because we were just talking about this earlier today, Erin and I. You know, if you're talking about a place and you're pitching it to a city's newspaper that is not your own, just make sure that you're writing about it in a way that people who aren't from your city will understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, although I would say the good thing about the current moment, it truly is, you know, pieces about race and racism, racial injustice can really go anywhere because we understand it's happening everywhere, and the local specifics, you know, might be more interesting for someone in another part of the country to learn about how things unfold here versus where they are. You know, people, for example, people think LA is far less racist a place than Baltimore, and you know, so it might be interesting to you know, just talk about a local place and, you know, and have it published elsewhere. So just a thought. I would not limit it.
Great. Yeah, and then really the last thing that I'll talk about is just how often do you bother the editor? So, you know, because your pieces are timely, you know, you can send your email, then wait a few days, and then I would just follow up once to see if they got it, and don't be passive aggressive. Don't say, this is my second email, why haven't you answered me? Because you don't want to put them off. You know, what I found to be very helpful in at least getting a response is to write, please confirm receipt in your subject line, and then have whatever your op-ed pitch line was, you know, pitch : jury duty, blah, 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 whatever I had. And then you can add a line in there. I really wrote this op-ed with your publication in mind, but if you're not interested, I'll send it elsewhere. I'll wait till tomorrow in case you've been out of the office or have a last minute change of heart. And then if, you know, if you don't hear back from them, or you do, then you can move on to the next newspaper. You know, you can get it published pretty quickly. For me, when I pitched my my op-ed, I first sent it to the LA Times and they rejected me. And then I sent to the San Francisco Chronicle and they accepted me. So, you know, it works. Try it that way. Okay, and also there are, if you Google the op-ed section of the newspaper that you're looking at, they will have detailed guidelines about what they're looking for and word count. And I saved a couple of those pages for the LA Times in the Dropbox for you guys. Okay, how common is it to get a rejection versus silence? I think it's more common to get silence because editors are just so tremendously busy. But you know, rejection is just a part of it, and you just have to keep sending it out.
Yeah.
Can you submit the same op-ed to? You can submit the same op-ed to multiple newspapers. Personally, I am of the opinion that I want to befriend the editor. And I don't want to have somebody think they're going to be able to take my piece and then I've given it somewhere else. So I don't like to simultaneously pitch. I like to do it one at a time. And I think if you put a little reminder in your calendar to just follow up, you will get a response quickly enough. And you should also be looking at, just like what Erin said, read the newspaper where read the opinion section. See if they've already published something that's similar to your op-ed. That wouldn't be the best place to publish your op-ed. They want different content. So that's what I would say on that. So now I want to hand the reins back to Erin for pitches. And what I will do is when we decide who's going next, I will try to unmute you, and you'll have to unmute yourself, and please unhide your camera too if you feel comfortable. All right, Erin.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so pitches. I'm sorry, how are we going to proceed with these?
Do you have the Excel document I sent you?
Yes, but I have some technical difficulties, so I don't actually have it in front of me.
Okay,
don't even share them.
Sorry, I can do it.
If you bring that up, I should have told you.
Okay. So I have Relinda Harvey first.
Listen to them more.
Relinda, did you? Hi.
Hello.
Did you unhide your camera?
I didn't unhide my camera. I'm sitting here with my newborn, so I'm just gonna try
Oh, okay. All right, that's fine.
to do it this way.
So,
okay.
Do you want to just read your pitch, or would you like? Do you have it in front of you?
I don't have it in front of me. I wasn't.
Okay, I'll do it.
Get called. I thought I would
It's
get.
okay. No worries.
Okay, Marilyn can do it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, my op-ed is about how the Black Lives Matter protests came to my majority white liberal neighborhood and prompted me to confront an explosion of casual racism on my Nextdoor app. What it's really about is trying to feel safe in a place I'm not sure that I belong.
That's great. Oh, Nextdoor, man, that's a monster. So great. I mean, tell me a little bit more. I mean, that is make a good op-ed. It just would lie in the details. Like how is this racism exploding? Is it something different from what you've experienced before, making you realize something new about your neighbors and the place you live?
I think that what it's doing for me is that it's I've been writing it and it's just seemed like a little bit overstuffed. And so for me, I'm from an all Black city and I went to a historically Black college. And I just have lived a very Black life.
Yes.
And then I found myself living in Santa Monica, which is very white.
You just kind of found yourself living there, huh? Just kind of woke up in the morning in Santa Monica. Okay.
Well, yeah, it was just an adventure me and my new husband at the time decided to take, like live someplace totally different, but still close to LA, or in LA in a sense. So
no, it's good on you. You can afford Santa Monica. It's not a cheap place to live. So.
No, it is not. But I really, we've been living here for about 7 years and have kind of formed like a community because we have kids now. Right. And so, at first we were very disconnected from the community, but now we're very like in the community. Our kids are in school and, we go to the parks and we meet people. And I'm very active on Nextdoor normally just to get recommendations, babysitters, that type of thing. But then things start sparking up with Black Lives Matter in terms of the protests and then riots coming to Santa Monica. It just kind of brought out a different ilk.
That you didn't anticipate, or that you hoped wasn't there?
I did not know that people were bold enough to release it.
All right, that's your op-ed right there. I didn't
Yeah.
know. Here's how I found out. And next door is like a hotbed of racial attitudes. I have next door too. And it seems like this innocent thing, people sharing cookie recipes or whatever, right? But then what you're confronted with, what you're really confronted with is taking a stand. That's what you're confronted with. You think as a Black person, and I'm overstepping my boundaries here, you can just sort of disappear into a white suburb. Not so. This is the illusion. This is what I call the illusion of integration. Okay. There's actually a book out there called The Illusion of Integration, but this is the conflict you're struggling with, right? I don't know what you've said or if you confronted anyone or if you've responded. I don't know, but you can use that in your op-ed. So you can take us through your experience, okay? It's funny, I'm a California native. I don't know anybody Black living in Santa Monica, personally.
Yeah, and Santa Monica does have like a lot of Black people that own houses and that kind of thing, like from pre-gentrification that they just didn't give up. I've met Black people that have lived in Santa Monica their whole lives.
That kind of context would be interesting to put in your piece. Very interesting, because many people don't know that Venice also had that community.
Yes, Venice as well.
And a lot of other beach cities, but, oh, excuse me. Hey, shut up. Sorry, not you. Not you. Oh boy, hey. No. So yeah, okay, I can, but keep to.
But if I could just add one thing, I found myself, and I usually avoid getting in arguments with strangers over social media. I just don't find it worth my time. Yeah. But I had kind of jiggered up, just kind of confronting people of their racism online. So that has been like kind of a change in me, to really be willing to like kind of crack open some of those conversations, even though they like just annoy me and eat up my.
Yes, what this really is about is you as a Black, and you're African American, right?
Yes.
Okay, it's about you kind of taking a stand. I mean, we talk a lot about white silence, but there's a lot of Black silence too, because it's for all kinds of reasons. So it's really you changing your response and kind of realizing that you sort of have to, whether it's because the protests have come to Santa Monica. What's so interesting about the current moment is that the protests are not in South Central or Crenshaw or Inglewood, where they usually are. They're in spaces that don't experience this kind of thing. So, and there you are, a Black person in Santa Monica. So I think that it seems to me the spine of your opinion piece would be you changing your behavior, and how that goes, how that is working out for you. Okay. Okay. And but and how it all started with Next Door. And are most of the people on Next Door people you know or don't know? I'm just curious.
No, they're people I don't know, but I know where they live, and I just kind of feel like they're representative of the people that I experience in my community.
Yes, but you also you said in the beginning, you said this is making you unsure of even where you live, or maybe it's making you rethink.
Rethink, like, do I want to raise my kids here? Like, do we need to get out of here? That's something you want to expand into as you start talking about this Next Door experience, right? It sounds like you live in the American dream, nice community, beach close by, all that's so ideal. But how ideal is it? That's part of what you're confronting, right? Exactly.
And then I would ask you to dig down, tell us what you said. I just sort of ends up in Santa Monica, and there is a historic Black community there. But you can tell us how, just what that decision was like, and has it always been alienating, or has it been comfortable at some point? And how was it before this whole thing erupted? I mean, how has it been living in a mostly white space?
I kind of get conflicted on just how much detail to go into, because there's just so much there.
Give yourself 3 details, or just think of the most pertinent ones or the most resonant ones. You probably have a lot of stories, but just think, or you've got 800 words or 1,000 words, so pick a couple.
Yeah,
I would do that. Pick a couple. If you have more room for more, fine, but pick a couple and pick up, something that stands out.
Okay.
That maybe didn't stand out to you before now, like you kind of put it away, but now that, something that never went away for you. Yeah.
Okay.
It would be a very good piece.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Good luck
Thanks so
with
much.
your baby.
Great. Okay, Relinda, would you mind muting? Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, the next person is Jill Cox Cordova, and I have to find her. Let's see. Okay, Jill.
Hi.
Oh, hi, Jill.
Hi.
Hey.
I just Jill, do you want to read your pitch, or do you want me to do it?
I can pull it up quickly if you want me to do it. It doesn't matter to me.
It's up to you.
Okay, I can read it.
Okay, do it.
Go ahead.
I said that, but let me find it. Okay, here I am. I said, greetings, Miss Kaplan. My op-ed is about Kennesaw, Georgia, the metro Atlanta suburb where Black Lives Matter protesters confronted the owner of a Civil War surplus store that displays a KKK robe, Confederate flags, and other nods to hatred. The protesters chanted that he had to go, but the 89-year-old responded that business is booming and that he stays ready for confrontations. I, a Black woman, do now as well. The racism I have endured in my Kennesaw neighborhood and workplace has conditioned me to expect it, but I refuse to be pushed out, especially now. Thanks for considering my pitch. Sincerely, Jill Cox Cordova.
Wow. Yeah, I read this. This is kind of incredible. So sounds like, a little bit like the one we heard last, in that you lived in this place a while, you know what the racism is, you've known, but the KKK robe in the window, kind of like the Confederate flag, I mean, as a symbol of white hate. And this is a store, right, where this guy's selling it, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Not to wear it to a costume party, probably. I don't know. But suddenly this is no longer acceptable. And the protesters are saying he needs to go, right? He's saying no.
Yes.
Okay, well, wow. What type of store is it where it's being sold?
He calls it a Civil War surplus store. It's in downtown.
Oh, Civil War surplus store.
Yes.
Uh-huh. So does it sell other sorts of, I don't know, Klan memorabilia?
He has all sorts of different Confederate flags. He has guns.
I've heard enough. I don't want to hear this. I'm having PTSD. So, but this guy's had the store, as far as you know, for a while. Is it something that's been around and suddenly it's now seen in a new light? Is that right? Like this is suddenly not acceptable, correct?
Yes, he's been around more than 40 years.
Very interesting. Okay, this is one of those things where I can completely you're just gonna have to write that straight. Like, so do you agree with the protest or not? Do you have?
I do, definitely.
Okay, you do.
And I've had confrontations with him myself as well.
You have to write that as well. If you've had conversations with him, then we definitely want to hear that for sure. This is one of those pieces where I would say you would anticipate, should voice the counter argument, which would be, hey, he's out of business 40 years, so he has a right, quote unquote, to, which might be true. I mean, I'm not saying he doesn't, but you would address that in some way. I would actually include that as part of the piece.
Okay.
Because what's interesting, what you said, business is booming, that would disturb me, but doesn't surprise me. When Obama got elected, suddenly the sale of bullets went through the roof. So we have this counteraction in this country. What you're really describing is a much bigger, this is the context, a bigger, the tension between those people who want justice, which is growing, which is wonderful, but you have people who are not interested in that and will hold on to these sort of, relics of injustice. Now you can say, oh, it's just a business and it's neutral. It's not neutral at all, right? But
Right.
these two energies are there will be some sort of confrontation. So be mindful of that. That's really what this is about. And so what you do is write your intersection with all this. you're like, you've been tolerating it sort of, kind of. Now I don't tolerate. Do I join the protest? Did I join the protest? Did I confront? And then, you know, do I confront this man? You know, tell us what action you took. And it's okay if you took no action, you know. That's the piece. With a little background about the Klan. Not everybody knows, you know, the Klan, particularly in Atlanta, in the South. Tell us, for those of us in LA who, you know, may not know for sure. But the spine, the through line is you, and you don't look very old.
Oh, I'm 53.
What? Wow. Well, I wouldn't have guessed that. But anyway, we age well. But anyway, yeah, you can also, you know, this has changed you. And that's the important thing about this piece. This is about those social forces. America is like coming to some sort of new, you know, there's a battle brewing. But what we're interested in is how you responded to this, you know, this scenario, and what you're going to do, you know, or not do. I would love to read that. I was telling Marilyn, I don't think anybody, I've not seen any Klan robes being sold around here, but they're probably out there somewhere. You go outside of LA, Inland Empire, places like that, no, Fontana, you might find it. But yeah, very interesting. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, James, I hope you're there. Hello, James?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great. Do you have your pitch, or do you want me to read it?
Yeah, is it all right if you read it? I don't have it.
And do you want to unhide your camera? for
Sure,
me?
sure.
Okay.
Oh, hi, James. Hello.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Thanks.
So this is James's pitch. My op-ed is about being the proud owner of an iPhone 4S, but what it's really about is the ways that a newer cell phone with a better camera might save my life, or someone's who looks like me during an altercation with American law enforcement.
Okay, James. So you're arguing that technology is critical to justice in some way, right?
Yeah, I think I think personally, I like to be disconnected.
From phone screen,
you know,
yeah.
Yeah, at heart, I'm a digital minimalist, hence the really old phone that I
like
have.
that. Okay.
And I take pride in that, but
yes.
Especially recently, I've just kind of been thinking about the importance of being able to record what happened to me, just in case.
Oh, yeah.
Something,
okay.
something
Sure.
happens. So that was sort of my angle.
Right. The way you know what? You just told me something interesting. So you are what you call digital minimalist, which I admire. You know, that's kind of on principle, but you're realizing that so many things, well, for one thing, so many injustices have been caught on phones, right? That you're rethinking your position, right? You're rethinking being a minimalist. That, oh, and by the way, you don't have to get an iPhone. I have a cheap Samsung S6, which I think is 4 years old now, or something incredibly old, and it works just fine. But do you have a smartphone, or do you use it?
Yeah, I do use it, but I try to I make a conscious effort to disconnect. And I was, as part of the piece as well, I was going to include the situation where I'd went to go and see Ta-Nehisi Coates speak.
Yes,
and I had these really good seats,
right?
And I had my 4S with me,
yeah.
And I went to take a picture, and my camera's so terrible that the Ta-Nehisi Coates and the person who was interviewing him looked like the poltergeists on the stage. I couldn't take a good picture because my camera is terrible. And so I was going to include that in the piece as well, but then, and this is very serious, I'm really sort of grappling with getting a better phone, because I know that I don't know, I might witness something that needs to be recorded, or something might happen to me.
And recorded clearly, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, that's very. That to me sounds like peace. So you've been resisting being, you know, like living in tech for, you know, for human reasons. Like, you know, really, we all know on the one hand, it is dehumanizing. It does degrade the quality of our life to constantly be on a phone, etc. But you're coming to a realization, which I'm assuming has been prompted by the recent events, current moment. And this might seem like a small thing, but a phone is no longer a small thing. It is just no longer a small thing, right? Literally, it is no longer just the small thing that you hold, right? And you're going to tell us why. You can tell us the instance with Ta-Nehisi Coates. Like, I needed that memory. I needed that image, you know, for not just because for a celebrity thing, but because it was important to me. And it was one of those instances where you're admitting something that seemed so trivial in a way is not trivial at all, and in fact is humanizing the way it is capturing and recording injustices, not just your personal memories, which are important, but injustices. And so I think that would be the piece, you know. And you can say, I have this phone, and you might want to explain to us specifically why you think an iPhone, you've got to have it. Is it because of the quality of the photos? I have a cousin right now who's been having horrible tech problems with an iPhone. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But, you know, and what's your solution? Would you think everybody should be issued an iPhone? Every citizen of America should, I mean, think about it.
I don't know. I mean, I think it should be seriously considered, because in all of those, the recent cases in, you know, with the Aubry case and
yes,
and certainly the George Floyd case, you know, those cases may have looked very different if they weren't filmed.
That's right.
And so I think that the digital minimalism thing is my personal preference, but then you know, just what's been going on has made me sort of seriously think about changing my position on technology.
I think it's a great piece. And I think you should talk about your life as a digital minimalist first. Like, you know, how was it going? You know, was it working for you? Did it, you know, I mean, what are you giving up? I mean, even though this is important to be, as someone just wrote, citizen journalists. That's what phones turn us into, all citizen journalists. That might disrupt the life that you actually like. So you might want to think about that out loud in the piece. Or I don't know, you haven't upgraded your phone yet. It hasn't happened, but you might say, I'm reluctant to do it because here's what I find. Here's what I like about the way things are right now for me. Talk about that. But then you might want to, you know, say, but it's just too important to not have this. It's just, I don't want it to rule my life, but it seems to be an important part of my life and the lives of all people, you know, who need to observe the life around them. Yeah. So I think it'd be great piece, but always keeping in mind your life as a digital minimalist and how you're gonna maybe give that up. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe you could do both. You know, I don't know. You tell us what you plan to do.
and this might be too broad, but then also, because I think I don't have apps on my phone like WhatsApp and all that, and I live in the East Bay, but most of my family live in the UK, and my nephew lives in the UK, and he's 16 and he's sort of coming of age, and so he teases me all the time about not having WhatsApp and that kind of thing. But even with what's been going on, you know, he's gone out and, you know, his mum sort of told me that he's been protesting as well. So even that, it sort of made me think about, okay, you know, perhaps even getting that app and connecting with him because of the things that he's experiencing in the UK.
Okay, put that in the piece. Don't forget it. Put that in there too.
Okay.
That's important, because that's part of you changing your mind. It's part of you rethinking this. Your nephew. Yeah. It's important. Yeah. It's important. Yeah. So I think it'd be a really compelling piece about the role of the necessity of tech, not just tech, but high tech phones in this, you know, for life from now on, right? It's kind of a sad thing, a sad commentary in a way, but you know, we need that. It's almost like being armed with it. Well, maybe that's not the greatest analogy, but yeah, you talk about that necessity. You just told us why you need it. You just told us what's changing your mind. Just tell us what's changing your mind. You might not be quite there yet. That's okay. Yeah. But tell us what's changing your mind. You know. And I like that idea of proposing, hey, let's just everybody get an iPhone. I mean, everybody should be handed one.
Yeah.
And not paying $700, you know, whatever, because it's become a necessity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be a good piece.
Yeah. Thank you.
As
Thank
someone
you.
who's quite low tech, I didn't even know I could get a mobile hotspot until Marilyn told me today. I was like, wow, who knew? Wow, it saved my life. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's fear of change. I know what that is. I know what that's like.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm actually kind of a hermit, so I understand.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. So,
Yeah, I understand.
yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Good.
Yeah,
And
thanks.
have fun. Have fun with the writing. You got everybody. Don't
Yeah.
forget the F word when writing. Have fun. This should be actually like, ooh, this is fun. I'm getting somewhere. I'm saying this. You know, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be all a pain in the butt.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, Marilyn. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I'm good
Thank
at my muting. Gavin, are you there? Gavin? Okay, Gavin hasn't answered me, so I hope I'm not
I'm here. I'm here.
Ah, there's Gavin.
Sorry.
Okay, no worries. Do you want to read your pitch or do you want me to do it?
I can read it.
Great.
Oh God, I'm so happy. I didn't think.
Hi, Gavin.
Hi. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, thank you for attending.
Yeah, of course. So my pitch is very simple. My op-ed is about my Black mother's secret pact that she made with herself at 13 to marry a white man. But it's really about how white supremacist ideology influences many of our decisions, whether we like to admit it or not.
Oh, wow. Yeah. First of all, a secret pact at 13. I want to hear what that was about. What was that? You don't have to tell me.
Oh, I was ready to tell.
Okay, you can tell me. Yeah.
Basically, in light of the recent events and what's going on in the world, my Black mother, she called a Zoom phone meeting with me and my 2 other sisters who were all mixed, obviously. And she basically asked us how we were doing and then started opening up for the first time about all of these just encounters she had, all of these really tough decisions that she had to make as a Black woman. She told us about getting beaten and threatened and being abused, literally things we've never heard from her in our entire lives.
You just never talked about it, right?
Never talked about it. And then she, in the midst of all this, she casually said, oh, you guys remember how I wore this red bindi on my head from the time I was 13 till I graduated high school? And me and my sister's like, oh yeah, I remember you telling us about that, like how funny. And she said, well, I never told anyone this, and your father doesn't know this, but that was my symbol to a pact that I made with myself that I was gonna marry a white man. And me and my sisters were like, what the fuck?
Why did she make this pact? Was she tired of being Black? What was the deal?
She,
I mean, 13 is a pretty young age, so.
Yeah, basically, I think with what the other stuff that she told us, she was basically putting together from a very young age that to her, she was not going to live the life that she wanted if she
were Black.
If she didn't associate with whiteness.
If she didn't if she stayed in the Black space, she was going to lose out. If she went to a white space, it was going to be better. Yeah, well, that's the sickness of American racism, because that's the reality of integration. That's the message Black people get. If you don't leave here, I mean, you have, in order for you to improve, you cannot stay in your own community.
Right.
You know, it's a caste system.
Right.
So she felt the only way out was to marry up, i.e. marry white. It's funny. My husband, who died 5 years ago, was white. He was Jewish. Mm-hmm. He thought he was marrying up. I said, you're right. You are marrying up. Okay. But there is this, what you really are talking about is the sickness of American racism and the racial protocol, which says, if you are Black, you can never be satisfied with that. That is not something you can aspire to be. It's something you must matriculate out of by hook or crook. This is the problem with so-called integration. if you look at it closely, and it presents a huge problem for Black people. In your mother's case, she said, well, she made a decision what she was going to do at an early age. That's how young she realized it. But what she was doing, of course, was discounting all, she was not, my family is Creole, come from Louisiana, so they're mixed with a lot of things. But this was this conscious decision people made, like when they called it crossing over. If you could pass as white in the white community, good on you, go for it, because there's nothing for you here, you know. And so your mother's she wasn't passing, but it was that same mentality, which is I must get out of here in order for me to have a good life and for my children to have a good life. So what we want to know in the opinion,
she wasn't passing.
Right.
She's like, I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not
I can tell that by looking at you. I can tell that. So, so what you want to write is when you discovered this truth, it's like, how did that hit you in in this modern age?
Right.
How did you feel about it? How do you feel about your mother? And more importantly, what does this say about American, this is the social context. This reveals a truth that maybe you hadn't thought about the deep-seatedness of racism, what it makes people do, what they feel they have to do.
Right.
That would be a fascinating thing. And then bring it back to, what do I do now? I'm not going to I'm not going to pass on that kind of, that kind of thinking. And yet that thinking is very real. It's not dead and gone. Not dead and gone.
No.
But I would focus on what you started out talking about would be a great anecdotal lead. My mother called me for this meeting. I don't know what it was about. We don't know. And all of a sudden she's telling us this thing about this bindi on her head and what it was for. And what's really interesting is that she'd not told your father, I guess, your husband. Secrets. American racism means you gotta keep secrets. And I mean, not everybody keeps, you can't share this with people. It has to be, it's a shameful secret, like pornography or something.
Right.
That's what you write about.
The shame.
The shame. Well, the shame of hiding it, but she was very open with, hey, but I had to do it, at the same time, it was a practical choice, right? It was practical.
Right.
In my mother's time, everybody understood why people were hiding their identity, because society left you no choice. And yet it creates shame. It twists you and contorts you, of course. And that's passed on to you. So the question is, how do you receive it? In your piece, how do you receive it? What did you think before? What do you think now about your mother, about yourself? That's what you want to talk about. That's a very, that is a form of injustice. And that is a very specific description of the legacy of injustice.
Yeah.
It's not police brutality, but it's a kind of brutality. And probably I bet all our Black friends, oh yeah, sure, you gotta marry somebody white. Of course you do. Like it's just received wisdom,
Wow.
That's what so you are telling that story. The question is what you think about it.
Yeah. Right.
The secrecy, the secret pact. Yeah. It's pretty, I think it says a lot.
Yeah.
It says a lot. And interesting why your mother chose to tell you now. Now, like when did she tell you? How many years ago?
No, this was last week.
Last week? Okay, this is not a coincidence then. So your mother was.
No, that's why I was like, this is crazy.
This writes itself. Go on. What are you talking about? This is already written. You don't need you just told me what it was. That is a very interesting response to this current moment.
Exactly.
This is the kind of awakening, that's very important because there's awakening for Black people too, not just white people.
Yeah.
It's the Black person who's saying, wait a minute, who doesn't even recognize their own oppression because they're told not to recognize it. They're told, keep it secret, or it's just part of the way things are. Your mother suddenly realized, wait a minute, that was messed up. That was some messed up shit.
Yeah.
And now it's like hitting her in a new way. And therefore, she's trying to break a chain here. She's trying to, she might have died with that secret. Who knows?
Right.
Not now.
Right.
So this is an enormous moment for your mother to do that, I think. I don't even know your mother. But this is a big deal. I hope she told your father. Or maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, that's I think a really good piece. Correct. Remember, focus it on, so how does it make you, not just to make you feel, but how does it fit into this current moment for you? How does it, just how do you process it?
Yeah. Okay.
Very interesting.
Okay.
And also, one last thing, just I have to know, because you say you're biracial. How did you grow up? Did you grow up as a Black person? Was there, I'm looking at you. I wouldn't mistake you for white, but in this country, you are either Black or white. There is no, the middle ground is sort of a fantasy.
Yeah.
It kind of is, unless you can actually pass. So I'd be curious to know, just briefly in the piece, what your racial experience has been like. That's important. That's important. Make it short, short, but that's important.
Okay.
Yeah. And how old are you?
I'm 33. 33.
You're Jesus year.
My Jesus year.
Anyway, so you're young. So yeah, I would be very interested in reading this.
Okay.
Very
Cool.
interested.
Okay.
It really writes itself.
Okay. I think I got, even how you said certain things, I can see a structure forming.
I can see it. I would say you can write. You have your choice, but I would lead with that meeting.
Okay.
My mother called me last week to say, I don't know, I thought you and your sister, she said, you and your, you're all like, what the hell? What are you sick? What's going on? And she felt compelled to tell you, and that's where it starts.
Right.
And so the next thing is, wow, she's telling me this, and then you have to dig into, what does this mean? Why, you never, that's it. And you're off and running.
Okay. Awesome.
Really interesting. Just the hard thing is just keep it to 800 to 1,000 words, but you can do it.
I know. Okay. And in the I guess my last question would be, as just an exercise after the meeting, I wrote down as much as I could remember about what she shared with us.
Sure.
So would the context of her upbringing be, how much space would that take up?
That's how much it matters.
Okay.
Where did she, and where did she grow up?
East Oakland.
Okay. Not West Oakland. I don't know. That's well, I don't know how she, she grew up out in a Black neighborhood.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know, unless you know something specific about what made her at 13 make this decision. Maybe something had happened to her in her neighborhood. Maybe, I don't know. This is interesting to me. The being 13 and making that decision.
Right.
Maybe her neighborhood matters. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something she read. I mean, I don't really know. You could ask her about that.
Yeah.
My mother forbids me from writing about her. I hope your mother doesn't forbid you. You know what? I write it anyway, and I just take the fallout. Okay, I just take the fallout. That's what I do. She's still talking to me.
Yeah, I think I'll have to. I may not be able to share like what the symbol was, because that will be a dead giveaway. But yeah.
Well, you do what you need to do, but beyond. But it's a fascinating story. I've never heard it before, and I've heard many, 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 many stories about racial angst, but this is an interesting one. But
Yeah.
something about deciding at 13 to marry a white man. Maybe she fell in love with Superman, or I don't know what happened. Something's happened for your mom that I don't know if she told you that part. I would be very curious to know that. Ask her another question. Be nosy. Go back and ask her.
Okay, I'll try to get some more information.
Yeah. What happened to you at 13? Why 13? Just
Yeah.
be a journalist. Go talk to her.
Okay.
But I'd love to read this. But again, it's how you respond to this. That she kept a secret, and now, knowing it, what does that do for you? What does that change for you, etc.?
Yeah. And she's still with my dad, so.
Okay, he's gonna read this and know the truth, but
It's very strange. Yes.
I can't imagine your parents. They're not. They grew up in certain generations. They know what black and white means.
Yeah.
They know they know the dynamic. They know that whether they talk about it or not. They know it. There's nothing they don't. I'm sure they're not oblivious.
Yeah.
She didn't tell you. Your mother didn't tell you this very specific thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, she told you so. Hey, now it's yours. She gave it to you. So now you can use
And
it.
I was like, do you know what you're doing? This is gold. Yeah.
What did she say?
What did she say? What do you
When
mean?
you said, do you know what you're doing? Did you say that to her? Do you know what you're doing?
No, I didn't. I have to,
Listen.
yeah, I have to figure out how to do this because she might get crazy yeah, I have to figure
Well,
it
you
out.
know what? Write it first like nobody's going to read it, okay? Do
Okay.
that first. Do that first. Otherwise, you will, just write it like nobody's going to publish it first.
Okay. That's good advice.
And then figure the rest out later, okay?
Okay. Sounds good.
Tell her not to sue me. It's not my fault.
I won't. I won't. It's good. I feel like it's a story that it's I feel like it's a releasing story. Like if other people read this, if other Black women from her generation were to read it, they might feel some type of relief or oh, someone else had similar thoughts that I did that I was ashamed about or whatever. I just think it's important to acknowledge exactly.
I think so.
Community.
How old is your mother?
She's 63.
Okay, she's a little older than me, but yeah, it's just look. This is not a pleasant story. It's not a pleasant story. It's not a story about liberation. The fact she told you though is liberating. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
That's what's liberating. That she felt compelled by recent events to, hey, let me share the story with you. She knew she didn't tell you because she knew what it sounded like.
Okay.
She knew all the implications, but she told you anyway, and that's the positive part.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Don't worry, she'll still love you. Don't worry.
I'm so sorry, but we need to move.
Sorry. Okay. All right, Gavin. Good luck.
Thank you.
Sashandra, I don't know if I'm mispronouncing your name. Are you still there? Sashandra, I keep trying to unmute you. Okay, I think she might not be paying attention.
There?
Okay, David Dawson.
David Dawson?
David, I'm trying to unmute.
Hey, I'm here. Go ahead.
Great.
I'm
Do you
coming.
want to show your camera? There
Hey,
you are.
how you doing?
Hello, David.
Hello.
Do you want to pitch or do you want me to read your pitch?
No, go ahead and read it.
Okay.
Please.
My op-ed is about the need for racial and economic equality, but what it's really about is how racial and economic equality is nothing but a myth and how accepting that changed my life for the better.
Okay, David, that's your story. The second part. That is really going against the grain. You're saying racial and economic equality is a myth? You think it cannot be ever attained ever?
No, it's not that it can't be attained. Sorry if I'm screaming. I'm all close to
No,
my
you're
computer.
fine.
But no, it's not that it can't be attained, but to me, America is a business. It's a corporation.
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, of course, it's incumbent upon the individual to get over the walls or through the walls or under the walls in order to get to where they need to be in life. And that's what my story would be.
So you're saying so you don't think there are racial barriers, or do you think there are racial barriers, but we just need to learn how to navigate them? Is that what you're saying?
There are racial barriers.
Mm-hmm.
Are racial barriers, but my question is are they as big as the media wants us to believe? Well, maybe there's economic barriers that are bigger. Maybe there's economic barriers that are bigger than what we realize.
Well, I would take issue with you. I would say, give me some evidence of that, or show me some research or something that actually says the economic barriers are bigger than we believe they are. I would need to be convinced.
So at this point, would I just be talking about my story? Is that's the best place?
Well, there's something that leads you to this conclusion. So you could talk about how you arrive. Yes, talk about how you arrive at this conclusion.
Okay, so my mother's older. She grew up during the Jim Crow. Not during, but I don't want to age her. But she grew up at a time where segregation was still prominent. And throughout my life, I'm from Dallas, Texas, but I live out here in California.
Okay.
And throughout my life, she warned me about racism and all the other isms of the world and what could happen. And I paid attention and I followed that doctrine. But then I ended up going to a top tier university, never really had any issues. I ended up going to a corporation as a top tier sales rep, never had any racial issues. And I just kind of thought to myself, all of a sudden, in the media, we're looking at racism, and of course racism exists, don't get me wrong. But what I'm noticing is that, is it race that people are really worried about? Or is it the ability to go after the money that they need in order to make a decent living for their family? And how big does race play into that?
A lot.
A lot?
You can't separate race from economics. You just can't. I mean, I would say there are people like you. I mean, good on you. You haven't directly experienced racism, but you must know that's not the reality for a lot of people. And that, there's just a million different ways that race is tied to economics. The reason why too many Black people are poor, not just broke, poor. And it's not, it's part of it is, you could even just look at the history of labor and Black people in this country. After slavery, there really was, no one wanted to employ them. And so employment and Black people have been a fraught issue for a long time. There are people who've made it through, who have decent jobs, but generation after generation after generation, the least employed group of people in the country are Black men. And that's not just by accident. So I would say that I would like to know,
Well, I
maybe
didn't though. Like I grew up with that. I never did. Like I've been able to be a homeowner, never been to jail, never been arrested. I've been pulled over plenty of times for doing stuff I shouldn't be doing. Mm-hmm. But I haven't had the same kind of encounters that a lot of Black men have had. And I'm still waiting after 33 years. When's that going to happen?
No, you don't want it to happen to you. You really don't want it to happen to you.
Of course not. Of course not. Of course
Right.
not. But all I can do is speak from my own opinion. Now, I know that, of course, we all have different opinions. We're all children of God. I understand that. But what about people who think, I don't know, just what about people who think differently? Who didn't see the world as, the other.
Well, here's the thing. You may not have lived the world as, your experience may not have, you may not have experienced racism directly. But that doesn't, I'd have to say you're one of the fortunate ones. That is not the typical experience of Black people in the country. So I don't know. I don't know. I think what's interesting is that your own experience is not the typical experience. And that, where does that leave you as a Black person in this country? You want to believe better, and you want to believe that, things can be better for other people like you. And yet reality bites and keeps coming back. And I would like to know in an opinion piece, how do you process that? I mean, the fact, it's funny, you said, wait, let me just say, you described yourself, not in the affirmative, but in the negative, which is, I'm not in jail. I have not been arrested. I'm still waiting to be pulled over. You are sort of the just in describing yourself that way, it's what you're not that makes you different. Not what we think of a Black person actually being. So it's very interesting. So many people in the middle class, I would say, have this, profile. I described you, a very racial incident for me, but by and large, I've gone, I do not have the experience my father had growing up half his life in segregation and half out of segregation. But I think you have to pay attention to the statistics, the things you don't directly experience, but that are all around you. The poverty, the pulled over. So you look like you're a concerned person. So the question, what do you do with this information? I think, and
that's why I would love to get your wisdom.
Oh, I don't
like with that information.
Let me go get you Mookie. Let me go get you Mookie. He'll tell you. No, I don't know. Sorry. No, I was gonna say I'm making a joke, but I would say sit down and think about.
Yeah.
Think about what you where are you in all of this, in this current moment of all this outrage about anti-Blackness, because it's out there and it's not as obvious as it used to be, but the outcomes are the same. And so where do you, as someone whose outcome is different and kind of a model outcome, what do you have to say about that? What do you do you know any other Black people who've not been as fortunate as you? Okay, you're nodding very hard there.
I've lived across the U.S. I was serving the military, so I've lived across the U.S. I travel internationally, So
well, that's
somebody's like, "Oh, he's in a bubble." I'm like, "No, I'm very hip to the game."
Okay,
but it's just a different story.
Okay, but the military is a very consciously integrated institution. They do
Yes,
that.
yes.
It's one of the
Yes.
few consciously integrated American institutions. Okay, so your experience is very particular, I think.
Okay.
I would think, but you're not in the military now, right?
No, no,
Are
I'm
you?
not in the military anymore. I'm a veteran.
Okay, good.
But I will
Okay.
say, you know what's interesting though? Just being out of the military and then kind of looking back, you know, sometimes I feel like the military is the white man's last hope for racial dominance. It's kind of turned into that. You know, with Donald Trump in office,
you
it's
know
turned it, like I started during Barack Obama's term, so it's a little bit different. But it's a different kind of tone with the military and how they're used with Donald Trump. You know, so I will say that. I will
Yeah.
say that. I'm seeing
David,
this.
David, I think that's a really fast. That would be a really interesting op-ed. How?
Okay.
I mean, do that. Do me a favor, do that, because I think that's a really interesting.
I can prove it too. I can give you facts.
Okay, good.
You
How
know?
how the military has changed from from when you were in it versus now, and how it's being used differently, and how it's being portrayed differently, and being manipulated and all that. I would love to hear. I would love to read that from a Black vet. I really would.
Yeah.
I think
no,
really
I would love to. There's all kinds of stories I can give to you too.
Sure.
But, yeah.
Why don't you start with that one? I would start with that one.
Okay.
Because I just think that's not a story I've heard at all.
Interesting. Okay.
And you
Okay.
have an expertise because you've lived it. You've been in the middle. You've served, and you turn on. You see what's going on. So you have something valuable to say that none of us can really say because we've not been there. So I would do that. I would do the military piece.
Military piece. Okay. Cool. Okay.
I would.
Cool.
And
And I
that's
appreciate
cool.
your wisdom on that, Erin. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, of course. Thank you.
Great. I'm so sorry, everybody, that we're running a little bit long. There's just so much great stuff.
Yeah, there is.
So I feel like I might mispronounce your name. Minaj? Oh, and David, if you wouldn't mind muting. Minaj, I think I unmuted you. Do you want to unhide your microphone or unhide your camera?
I'd like to leave it off. If it's
Okay, that's fine. Do you want to do your pitch or?
yeah, I expanded on. What
I'm sorry, can you turn up your volume? The volume is really low. I can hardly hear.
1 second.
Okay, I'm waiting.
Is this better?
That's
Yeah.
much better. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, just plugged in my earphones. Okay, so I just wanted to preface this by saying I'm targeting this mainly at non-Black audience, readers, and I wanted to share my own experience and sort of my own evolution of how I view the world. So here's my pitch. Okay, my op-ed is about how I used to be a racist, but what it's really about is how the deep white state and our popular culture engenders a false narrative of African Americans, even among a queer brown immigrant person like me, and how facing my own challenges and share of discrimination helped me in overcoming my biases and re-educating myself on the continuing racial injustice of the deep white state.
I think that's great. When you say deep white state, you mean?
So I'm just using so we've heard a lot about the deep state.
Deep state, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
so I'm just kind of wanted to use that, and as I think about it and how when we talk about systemic racism, I just wanted to combine those two concepts and say it's basically the deep white state. So
I love it. I love your headline. Well, I used to be a racist. I can just see this headline.
Right.
That's very provocative, and I'm sure it's true.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to hear that. And you a person. Where are you from?
I'm originally from India.
From India. Okay. And you said did you say you were a gay? Also.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Fascinating. So
right.
what the story really is about is it's your experience, but it's really how these attitudes are travel everywhere, and people bring them to this country, and it's exported and it's imported, and you had to work through that. Now I'd love to read that. I think, and so of course you're working through that has that speaks to so much social context. And I'm going to ask you a question, just briefly. This is something you worked out over years, or like, did you have sort of an epiphany?
So in the sense, of course, it's not a, so what I'm trying to do here is like have, brown people or white people to kind of admit that we have our biases. Of course, I'm not like an overt racist, but we all have our biases, and just to kind of making others, other non-Black people comfortable in kind of accepting that this kind of bias exists, and like with white people, there's also privilege. So yeah, I wanted to kind of share that, like when I first moved, so I've actually kind of written a draft of this already. It's at 1,500 words. I'm trying to kind of compress that. So yeah, I start by sort of identifying myself as like, I'm this racist person. I grew up in India, and in India, I grew up in a very diverse, there's a linguistic aspect to it, and there's multiple like religions in India around me, and going to a Catholic school around that. And then I set it up saying, when I first moved to the US, here are all the things I was told, like, oh, don't go to this neighborhood, or don't go to this bar, which was near my friend's house. They said, oh, it's a Black bar, don't go there. And and I kind of expanded that by saying, we never really questioned that, thanks to all the like whatever Hollywood and other things that we have seen. And then,
yes. I think that would be really, really interesting and honest, and because you're telling on yourself, and not only that, you're speaking to immigrants coming with the same racist attitudes. I mean, this is part of the American experience that they absorb. It stands to reason. But what you're really saying, in India has some experience with a caste system. There was a caste system here, and Black people are on the bottom, and you learn that right away. And what it means is that Black is a construct. If you're Black here, you're on the bottom, and if you're not Black, you could be Indian or something else, but at least you're not Black, and that's what you want to be. That is the dividing line, correct?
That is the dividing line. And then, but in the white people's mind, like I loved what you said earlier, there's a binary here. You're either white or you're not white. No, they don't see it.
Correct.
So yeah, I spent a lot of time in California, and like even in place like San Francisco, there's a lot of this kind of racism in the gay community, and I've been called names and kind of said, he's trying to sell drugs to you, and things like that. So I'm just using all that kind of stuff seems to kind of tie in and say how this kind of shorthand representations is what this Amy Cooper and Christian, what happened with New York and in Central Park and
Central Park,
and
I think that would be great. I think we should focus in the piece on like just how you came to realize the truth. You know what I mean?
Right.
And how it went over in your community, or did you get many takers? Did you get any? Were you sort of a rare person in this way, in terms of your community coming to this realization? Be very powerful, very powerful. I think it would be just again from a point of view we don't normally hear at all. And the fact that you are, you're not white, you're Indian. I don't know what Indians call white people, but anyway. And you're also gay, which is another marginalized community. That would be very interesting. I don't know if that played a part in your coming to realize the truth about this country. Maybe it did. I don't know, but it'd be something to talk about.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but I would love to read this piece, and also don't forget so where does it lead you? What do you think about this country now? Where are you now with the truth? You know what I mean?
Right.
It'd be important to include.
Sure. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, be really good. But then you've already written it, so that's good.
Yeah, it's at 1,500 words, so I have.
That's good. 50. You can always. It's always good to have too much copy versus not enough. So you might have all these elements in there already. So maybe a little trimming.
Yeah,
that's all. Good.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dragonfly, are you still there?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. Do you want to show your camera?
Yes. Hi, everybody.
Hello. Hi. I saw you early. I saw you like one of the first people I saw when I signed up. Hello.
Hi.
You
Thank
wanna-
you so much for offering this class.
Oh, thanks Marilyn for offering the class.
Dragonfly, do you want to do the pitch or do you want me to read it?
I'm sure I'll read it. I have it here.
Okay.
My op-ed is about the spiritually conscious community fighting loudly for animal rights while being deafeningly silent about the Black Lives Matter protests. But it's really about how institutional change has never been effected by Black people alone. And we need white allies now more than ever to raise their voices and use their privilege to help us in the fight for racial injustice. Sorry, in the fight for racial justice.
Thank you. Okay. So the first part, it's interesting. I mean, I'm an animal person too. Animal rights. I'm working on it. Like I said, I have 6 animals, actually 10, but never mind.
Wow.
It's a long story. And that first part, you said, you could read that again, just the first part about what it was about versus what it's about.
It's about the spiritually conscious community
Yes.
fighting loudly for animal rights, but being silent about Black Lives Matter.
Well, Black Lives Matter. Okay. The real issue is, so why do you think animal rights people would be interested in Black Lives Matter? Why does it? Oh, because they're spiritually conscious?
Exactly.
Well, I will just say, I would like to hear your argument as to why they should care about Black people. Let me tell you something. I've worked in animal rescue, okay? I'm a big dog lover. I'm the only Black face I've ever seen in the dog rescue world. And a lot of those people, they might love dogs, and that's all they love, okay? It doesn't extend to people necessarily, and Black people especially. There are a lot of Republicans, frankly. I'm just saying, this is just, it can be a conservative community. Maybe some people who are pro-animal rights are spiritually conscious, but you have to make that connection for us in a piece.
Okay. Okay.
You're assuming, hey, why aren't these, these vegan, you're talking about the vegan types, right? The people,
Yeah.
Okay. You need to make the argument as to why it should track. I mean, it's obvious to you, but maybe not to people reading. There may be some Black people reading who don't think about animals. I mean, I think it's a totally through line. You know, I think it was Gandhi who said it's the way you treat animals will determine how you treat the entire world, right? People and the whole entire planet. So you need to make this argument in your opinion piece, and then say, and then it'll be clear. Then we'll say, oh yeah, she's right. We need to extend that to, I have to tell you, I saw somebody marching with a dog. The dog in a t-shirt said, "I hate racists." I thought that was kind of funny because like the dog has an opinion. But anyway, yeah. So tell us in the opinion piece why this is so obvious to you.
Well, now that the way you put it is making me wonder if that's the way I should formulate it, because really I think what I'm calling out, I've written the piece already, but what I'm calling out is the hypocrisy around people who claim, well, we love everyone, we're all one family, but they're not standing up for their Black sisters and brothers.
Right.
Even the way they stand up for cows and pigs. They'll post really gruesome images of cows being slaughtered, but then they'll claim they're too sensitive to watch the George Floyd video. So it's really that kind of hypocrisy that I want.
What you just said is wonderful, perfect, because you just made me, I feel like I suddenly felt a shock with that, because I'm a person who follows PETA and I hate animal abuse and etc. Now, I don't believe in racial justice, but I have to say, why? Here's the truth. It's much easier to feel sympathy for an animal. Much easier. Let's just face it. They're helpless. They weren't running from the cops. I mean, I don't know, right? I mean, so animals, it can be very easily emotionally attached to them. But what you're saying makes sense. You need to acknowledge that, and tell us how you do it, right? Or do you are you an animal? You're a spiritually conscious person, right?
I do consider myself to be, and I was raised vegetarian. I've been vegetarian almost my whole life. But I'm not an activist in that regard.
That's all right. You don't have to be, but you can make this. But you have credibility there,
Mhm.
right? You're vegetarian, you know, you're down with that, but now you are saying you need to write about what you see as hypocrisy. How you can be shocked by the video, you know, stick to that. Those videos. There was one really awful video that made the rounds, you know, a year ago, so of dog slaughter in Korea. It was something I didn't want to repeat because it was so awful.
Oh.
But you're saying we need to see the same brutality in people videos, you know.
Or at least the same rage about the brutality.
Okay, that's what you need to talk about, and that would be a great op-ed, right?
Okay. Right on.
Great one. And then the second part, you said what it really was about. Repeat that, the second part.
It's really about how institutional change has never been effected by Black people alone, and we need white allies now more than ever to raise their voices and use their privilege to help us.
So you're not trying to alienate these white spiritualists. You're saying, look, hey, come on board, come on. You know, you could.
Yeah.
So you can critique them, but also embrace them, or you know, at sort of the end of the piece, say, so you know, really, this is not to alienate you. It is to include you. It is to say you have a place here. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do that. Be generous in your piece.
Okay.
Because, like you say, you need the allies, right? And there are. How about animal people who are also Black allies? You know, and make them see how compatible it is. It's kind of uncomfortable because, of course, you know, people are saying, you know, these cops are treating these people like dogs, like animals, but even the animal people won't admit that, right? I mean,
right.
we use the images of animals all the time when we talk about anti-Black brutality. So you need to point that out, but you also need to say, so let's you don't want to equate Black people with animals, you know what I'm saying? You don't want to do that, but you want to talk about where people's sympathies lie and admit how much easier it is to identify with animals or to feel protective, to feel, you know, because they need our help. Black people need our help, you know, not that they're helpless, they're not animals, but that same compassion, we need to, you know, we need to make use of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And probably listen. The thing of it is, you know, you can say this in the piece, all white people, whether they're animal activists or whatever they are, we all are conditioned in the way that Minaj just described, conditioned to tune Black people out. We're just conditioned to minimize. We're conditioned. You have to acknowledge that too. Many people just don't even know they're conditioned. Black people are conditioned too in the same awful way. Like the mother, Gavin's mother, who said, I got to leave this Black space to really make something, to make myself matter. Mm. That's how we all think. We have to be honest about that. So it's not just the animal activists, it's all of us. But they are in a good position. They are in a better position than most to expand the compassion. They're already there, you know, they're in, you know, they just have to, you just have to point it out.
Okay.
You know?
And midway through the letter, it becomes really second person point of view, where I'm speaking directly to white people.
That's fine. You can do that.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, cool.
Yes,
cool.
You can use the second person, sure.
Cool, okay.
It might work better as a letter, dear white people, or dear animal activists.
Yeah.
You can speak that can be very effective.
Okay.
Thanks for pointing that out. For everybody still listening, the second person can be really helpful because it's more like, you know, you're directly making the argument to those people. So yeah, cool. Sure, go for it. Yeah, I think I would first, as a Black woman and an animal person, I'm trying to be vegetarian. I'm a half-assed vegetarian, but anyway, I would love to read this. I think this is a dot that needs to be dots that need to be connected.
Right on.
Right on. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
So Erin, I don't know if it's okay to take one more person. So Chandra has come back. And
do I get overtime for this, Marilyn? Okay.
Okay.
Past my bedtime. No, I'm kidding. Okay. Yeah. One more. We're good. One more. Okay.
Right. So Chandra, I'm trying to unmute you. Oh, there you are. Okay, great. And I hope I didn't butcher the pronunciation of your name.
No, it's fine. It's Cassandra. It's a long story. CH is silent, but it's.
Oh, okay. Sandra, do you want to unhide your camera?
Sure.
Hi, is it Sandra or Sandra? You said.
It's Sandra. It's like Sandra with the stutter. That's what I tell people.
Oh, okay, that's cool. Cassandra. All right. But it's a CH. Never mind.
Yeah. It's Sasha and Creole. It's, yeah.
Okay, Cassandra. Okay, hi.
Hi.
How can I help you? Well, let me hear your pitch.
Your pitch, or do you want to pitch?
I can read it. I have it pulled up. Thank you so much.
Okay, sure.
My op-ed is about my birth story. I was born from a hate crime, but it's really a story about revealing the two sides of America. How my Haitian immigrant parents worked their way to owning their first home, the first African-American family on their street, filled with hopes and dreams of the promised American dream, and how it turned into their worst nightmare. How a group of white neighbors can feel they have the liberty and supremacy to storm my parents' property with armed weaponry, tongue twister.
Okay.
Thank you. And beat my mother, then 8 months pregnant with myself and my twin sister, committing murder and other violent acts and ultimately getting away with it, but yet still calling these terrorists and murderers your neighbors. This is the America I was born into. This is the America so many Black lives, brown and indigenous lives know, and this is also the America that so many Black, brown, and indigenous lives were also forced and taught to protect and keep silent. This is the real America, because if you didn't know, now you know. Thank you.
Oh my God. Wait a minute. So wait a minute. This horrible assault that happened. Well, you're lucky to be here.
Yes, I am.
And your mother was beaten? Did I get that right? She was beaten by white neighbors.
Yeah, my parents were the first.
Where the hell did you move to? Where was that?
This was in Boston,
Massachusetts. Huh? What?
Boston, Massachusetts.
Oh, say no more. Okay.
Yeah.
And yet they continue to live there and raise you, etc.
Yeah, I mean, it was their first home. They had just moved in, maybe, and the details are still kind of, I mean, mixed up.
Roughly what year is this? What year? Yeah.
1981.
Oh yeah. Well, okay. Okay. So this horrible thing happened. Did you grow up knowing this?
Yeah.
And okay. And so what you're saying is this experience really showed you what America is. I mean, you're American, right? You're born here, correct?
Yeah, I'm first generation.
I mean, the real thing I'd like to know that I'm interested in is what was your mother's attitude about America after that? Did it change? Did she struggle with it the rest of it? You don't have to answer me, but this is what would be. And how was that passed on to you? How was this attitude, or how did this experience affect you in your conception of America? You know, I mean, it's very different being born here versus bringing in these wonderful immigrant ideas of America. Something I've never experienced and that you have not, but you're that 1.5 generation. You understand what that American dream is because your mother carried it, and yet, did it survive for her? What does the dream mean what did it mean to her? And then what does it mean to you? Right?
Yeah.
It sounds to me like you don't think much of it.
I mean, I think I've just had at such an early age.
Yes.
What the American dream, who that really was implied for.
Sure. Okay, so you got it early. Was it because of this experience or is it other experiences?
I think both. I mean, I think just unfortunately being Black in this country, you're exposed to so much more. And so I just grew up knowing as a little girl and we moved out of Massachusetts. We ended up moving away, but I remember being 4 and 5 and being pointed out that this boy across the street, this was a young boy at the time, like 17 when it happened, and they lived across the street from us for a while, and having that consciousness and being aware that, oh, he did this horrible thing to my mother and my family, and
the hate crime. Yeah.
You know, tried to take us out pretty much, and just being aware. So having that's a very clear case of brutality. Okay. And this is one, you know, it's kind of
refutes this idea that, oh, we don't have that kind of violence anymore in the country. You know, that's gone. That's gone. That doesn't happen. It's more subtle than that, etc. And so when we see the police brutality, then we're kind of shocked awake. But you're telling us a story that is quite brutal. That is something that has followed you your whole life. And it doesn't, you know. And so just telling us telling us what happened and how it affected not just, you know, how it affected, first of all, your own family, your mother's conception of the American dream. I can't imagine what it did to that. And what it's done to you and as a Black American. But I'm really curious to know what your mother, did she hate this country? Did she forgive it? Did she, I mean, what happened there? And how did you absorb, you know, I mean, is she bitter? Is she, you know,
Well,
can you tell us?
Well, she's no longer living.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. So I do have my father that
Okay.
still can talk to and reach out about it, but my mother growing up was an activist. And so I grew up going to marches and protests.
Oh, okay. So that was her response. She became an activist. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
And,
but okay,
yeah.
good. This ties into the current moment, of course. You know, so that made her an activist. This happens. You know, my father became an activist because when he went to try to integrate an all-white school in 1949 in Los Angeles, you know, people showed up with torches and Klan robes and stuff like that. So that led him to a life of activism. This sounds, you know, form of a hate crime. So this happened. But what happens to an immigrant? My father's from the South, so he had no illusions. But your mother's an immigrant, thinking, you know, so. I don't know. So the issue seems to be, what does that leave? Where does that leave you feeling about this country? Are you, and you don't have to answer me, but in light of recent events, are you more hopeful? This takes you back to that people, do you think people are getting more honest about the brutality that you've had to live with a long time? That's really the piece, right? I think. You tell us what happened, because it is about that kind of brutality that you know, we don't normally hear about. And 81 is pretty late for that to be happening, you know? And yet, you know, it happened and it's shaped you. And so now, with the sort of new consciousness or whatever's happening now, how are you feeling about that experience? Do you think did you feel before there was no hope for change, or that this was just never going to be made right? Or do you have any hope now? I mean, just tell us where you're at with that in the piece. You don't have to, I know it's a lot to articulate now on a Zoom camera, okay, I'm sorry, but this would be in the piece because we're interested to know, again, you intersecting with all of these social forces, and you have a personal experience that's very much about social forces and, you know, the kind of future of this country. That's really important to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've never seen anything. I feel like because of who my mother was, that I've been very vocal of certain injustices growing up.
That's good.
And I feel like in the past, they have fallen on deaf ears. And so therefore I've always been called the angry Black person, or it's not about racisms, or
join the club.
Yeah. And
right.
So it's a mixture. It's a very surreal feeling and I even said this today, I just feel like I cried. I just let out a huge emotion of everything today, because for so long I've been meant to feel that it was all in my mind, like so many other people of color or Black.
But it wasn't in your mind because you had a very direct experience with it. Your family did. So that makes it even more pressure there. More feeling like you're being repressed. You know, yeah, we're all told that, yeah, you know, it's all in your head, blah, blah. But you know for sure, and that's not just in your head, it actually happened and it had a very direct impact. So you can say, but this instance of release for you that you just described is very interesting. That's a good thing, right? You get to let it out. And does it have somewhere to go now? We can talk about that in peace. You know, will this hate crime finally be validated? Is really what you're trying to answer in this piece, right? In a piece, I hope. That's what you're trying, that's the question.
Yeah.
You know, Yeah, and I would like to know in the piece how your mother became an activist, but in the immediate aftermath of this crime, what were things like? You were there, you were not even born or close to being born, but maybe you can tell us from recollection what was it like for your family to live there? You don't have, traumatic, but yet they stayed. And again, talk about how they continue to believe or not believe in this American ideal. It's very important.
Yeah.
Because we don't hear a lot from Black, we when in this country, we talk about immigrants, we're thinking a lot of Latino immigrants because that's the huge majority, etc. But a Black immigrant has a particular burden to bear because once you come here, you're just a Black American. Guess what? We don't care if you're Haitian or this or that. You're on the bottom now. So it must have been kind of a shock coming from a mostly Black country where this different social dynamics. That's another thing you can talk about.
Yeah.
I think it'd be very powerful.
Yeah. Thank you. That's very helpful and very insightful. A lot of questions for me to.
Good. Yeah. It'll be, yeah, again, remember the spine of it is that hate crime that's always sat there, that is an actual, incident of brutality that you felt was in some way minimized your whole life. And maybe that's changing.
Okay.
So,
yeah, thank you.
Go write that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks, Cassandra. That was powerful.
So I think we probably should wrap up because we've gone so over.
Yes. I've got to run. Yes. I've got to eat.
Thank you so much, everybody, for participating in this class. We really want you to write these op-eds and send them out. They need to be published. It's really important. That's why we did this class. So
each and every one was really important for different reasons. So yes, I would absolutely encourage people, follow it, write it, hone it, and get it out there. This is all part of the moment.
Yeah, and if you want Erin's help on making it extra amazing, take her one night op-ed clinic this Sunday or next Wednesday. It'll make a big difference. And that's all we got. We'll post the recording and I'll try to save the chat. Thank you for being so supportive in the chat, everybody.
Yes, thank you all. I've been actually reading the chat, even though I didn't think I was going to read them, but they've all been really interesting. Thanks everybody for hanging in there. And I'm sorry I can't all see you at once. It really, oh well. When the pandemic is over.
That's right.
Different.
Right. That's right. And don't forget, everybody, that you can download the op-ed structure and the instructions on how to pitch and the pitch letters from the Dropbox that you were sent initially, because we want you to have that so you can be successful. Okay?
Yeah, and also, please sign up for the storytelling class.
The free storytelling class.
And spread the word. Like the more people who are sharing their stories and writing these op-eds, the better. And
for sure.
Stay tuned because there's going to be more of these types of classes coming. So
great. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great night. Thank you so much,
everyone. Thanks, Marilyn. Thanks, Jeff. And Mookie says good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.